Welcome to the Pacesetter Pod, where we explore and reveal the perspectives, insights, and approaches to deliver great results and growth in your agribusiness through better execution. Here's your host, the Integration Pacesetter, Joe Mosier.
Welcome, Pacesetters of Agribusiness, to another episode of the Pacesetter Pod, where we amplify voices from across the agricultural industry. We aggregate those perspectives, and we elevate our collective thinking around strategy execution. I'm your host, Joe Mosier, and thank you, as always, for tuning in today. You know, this program is really a complement to the strategy and advisory services that we offer our ag executives. It's really about one thing, helping turn strategy into outcomes. That's why we started the show back in 2023. It's why I choose to sit in front of the mic each week to share impassioned pleas and personal perspectives on challenges that I know are facing many of you out there listening. And it's why I regularly invite guests onto the show to share their perspectives, their observations, and their reflections around how they're overcoming some of those challenges and how they're looking to accelerate execution within their agribusinesses. And now, while most of the conversations we have are confined within the familiar boundaries of agribusiness and agriculture and the ag markets, you know, this is a side project of the business. I guess I'm the proverbial boss, and so I do enjoy some leash and latitude here and there. And today I want to stray a little bit from the normal fare in a way that I think is relative and additive to many of you that I know that are listening, because I also talk with many of you offline, formally and informally, through your work in the industry. And specifically, I want to talk about AI. And more specifically, I want to talk about how I'm using it in my business and how I think about that in the context of you, the ag executive. Now, to be clear, this does not mean to suggest that my job in any way mimics yours. It certainly doesn't. And it's also, I'm not sharing my story because I think I'm on the technological frontier and applying this technology in novel use cases, but rather because I think at a foundational level, we share some very similar challenges in trying to always look for ways to extend our capacity to execute, both through productivity and effectiveness, but then to also find leverage and find ways to broaden our scope of impact in the work that we do. You know, as a leader in agribusiness, this is something I know you guys talk about all the time, and you wish you had more hours in the day or wish you had perhaps more of yourself, but the reality is you can't replicate yourself. And even if you could, I'm fairly certain that none of your P&Ls could support the double salary associated with that. And so it's necessary that we start to look at different ways to achieve these objectives, and AI is one of the most promising and compelling vehicles for that kind of productivity, effectiveness, and leverage extension that we've seen perhaps ever. Thank you for tuning in today. Before we start, a quick reminder to like and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and please consider leaving us a review to let us know how we're doing. It's the best way you can support the program, and it doesn't cost you a thing. Okay. So in today's discussion, I want to kind of go through this in three parts. I want to talk about some of the internal guardrails that we use around AI within the business. And I want to share some quick points around getting started and some of the things that I experienced and some of the things that I've observed that have worked very well within client organizations. Those first two parts will be very short and brief. And then I want to get into 5 examples of, I would say, you know, let's call them low sophistication, high impact applications of AI in the work that we do. They might not all apply to your business, but I think they'll all illustrate the power of the tool and the power of experimentation. So first, let's talk about internal guide rails. You know, in no case do we apply AI in our work without semblance of controls and governance. A couple of ways that this, you know, the things that this looks like is in the tools that I choose to engage with, we always look for express commitments to not allow third-party training on our data. I think that's really important because when you put data into the system, and I don't have huge data lakes of sensitive and confidential information, nonetheless, we want to know what are the boundaries of where that data is being accessed, who's using it and for what purposes. And so we don't want to be feeding into the system proprietary data and information that could inadvertently be used to subsequently train additional models. That doesn't feel like the right thing to do ethically, and it also doesn't feel like the right thing to do in terms of personal security and privacy. The second thing we do is, even with that assurance in place that the data is not subject to third-party training, any data that we also ever put into an LLM or another device, we always make sure it's anonymized. So if we're doing analysis on a large data set of information from a client organization, we're going to anonymize, of course, the company. We're going to anonymize location and any sort of GPS or locating metrics that could identify specific assets. Anything around customer information is going to be anonymized or removed. We make sure that we try to harvest the engine and the horsepower of the technology, but we don't trade the sensitive aspects of the information in exchange for access to that horsepower. That's the purpose of the subscription. And so we take those additional steps to anonymize information that we ever use to put into one of these systems. And the last thing is, anytime we're using AI in real time, and we'll talk about this in one of the examples here around meeting assistance, we also ensure there's disclosure and consent. So there are AI tools that you can use out there that allow bots to, for example, join video and audio calls without the knowledge of the counterparty. Now, you might be sitting in a single party consent state where that is perfectly legal to be recording calls. But for me, that didn't feel like the right thing to do ethically. It didn't feel consistent with the relationships that we build with our clients. And so, we will name it that we're using AI. And if I fail to mention at the start of a call, it's always very obvious because, of course, the bot joins the Teams call, the Zoom call, the Google Meets call, whatever it might be. And so there's always the option to opt out. So again, we look for express commitments to not allow third-party training on data that we input into the system. We look to ensure that data is anonymized regardless to reduce the potential exposure of sensitive information to the models. And we also look for disclosure and consent when we're using it live with our clients. Now, let's move into getting started, because this seems very obvious, but I do see folks getting hung up here. There's been a lot of talk, myself included, over the past couple of years around saying you don't want to have an AI strategy, right? If the board is asking you, what's our AI strategy? For me, that's a signal that the wrong questions are being asked. It's not about having a strategy for AI. It's about having a strategy for what work are we doing that we're using AI to support. AI is not the objective. AI is a vehicle to achieve your objectives, or at least to accelerate your ability to achieve those objectives. And so we don't start with grandiose goals. We don't start to sit there and hypothesize, okay, what's a big thing that we can do that AI can do that could help us? I think that's looking from the wrong angle. Rather, we start with experimentation. And in my experience, experimentation is the great unlock. Like I said, today I'm going to share those low sophistication, high impact examples that have sort of, for me, illustrated the power of the tool and led to additional incremental uses. They might underwhelm some of you, if not many of you. But again, I think they're a relevant illustration of the idea that I want to convey. And that's that usage and practice with AI, even in very elementary and rudimentary ways, is the price of admission for getting to the more value-added application of the technology. I'm certainly not a technologist. I don't think we have any, highly credentialed AI researchers making $1 million a year in base comp sitting within the management teams of the companies that we support. That's not a cost structure that our industry can generally support from a margin perspective. And so I think it's through that careful and thoughtful experimentation of what's the work that I need to get done and how can AI help me get this work done? The more that you ask those questions, the quicker you'll see the opportunities. So we're going to move into those 5 different examples I have, but very quickly, a couple of grounding premises here. For the most part, today, when I'm talking about AI, I'm talking about large language models, or LLMs, as they're commonly referred to. And these are the retail user interfaces that most of you are familiar with. ChatGPT from OpenAI, Claude from Anthropic, Gemini from Google, Grok from XAI are some of the more common headline solutions out there. I primarily use Claude. That's just something I've landed on after experimenting with all the different tools and looking at the use cases that I have and the quality, the speed, the performance of each of the tools. That's the one that I've landed on. And I'd be happy to talk about that separately if you want to reach out and understand why. But an LLM, became broadly public, became a matter of broad public awareness in late 2022 when ChatGPT 3.5 came out from OpenAI. The numbering there, 3.5, clearly indicates that there were previous models. And in fact, OpenAI was releasing these GPT models back as early as 2018, but not publicly. So that's what we commonly think of with AI. But beyond that, there's a variety of different enterprise products and applications on the marketplace. So you'll see things around advanced CRM products. People are using AI for workflow automation, chat and support bots on websites, internal knowledge assistants for your employees to query when they're onboarding, learning new skills, responding to customer complaints, quality assurance, security and surveillance. It goes on and on and on. But primarily today, when I say AI, we are talking about LLMs, which is a limiting constraint, but that's where we started. And so that's where we're going to start today. So with all that said, let's get in now to the third and final part here, the 5 examples. Again, I want to manage expectations. These are not going to necessarily blow your hair back, but they have been the foundational experiments that we have run, the things that I have done within the business that has unlocked a lot of new ways that we're looking at the tool and how do we extend and amplify the impact we have with our client organizations. The first one is transcription. Now, this might seem like the dumbest and least sexy use out there, but the reality is with my work, I spend a lot of time in front of groups. I spend a lot of time with leadership teams in meetings with department heads, executive teams, boards of directors, you name it. And oftentimes, the physical setup of those rooms and where they're located, we don't have the technological means to record those conversations. Nor do we always have the desire for those things to be recorded because they're inherently sensitive, right? Capital allocation, potential asset closures, reorganizations, mergers and acquisitions that are being considered, talent assessments. There's a variety of things that you might not want to have recorded. So I need to lean on a practice that I've had for my entire work life, and that I take notes. I don't take notes because I want to capture the entirety of the meeting. I'm not doing shorthand to have a full transcript of all the proceedings, but I take notes so that I can capture items of import that I think were perhaps a surprise to me, things that I learned, points of friction that we need to revisit, points of decision that we need to confirm, open questions that we did not get resolved, action items, next steps, who's accountable, due dates, things of that nature. I take a copious amount of notes because it helps me make sure that we actually have each one of those times that we're sitting in a room together. It is accumulative and we're building from there, and we actually move from there into the next phase of the work. Okay. Now we make sure we get to the next phase of the work, and that the time we spent has been codified and we can move forward from there. Now, that's not a problem. AI doesn't need to help me with that. That's something I've been doing for a long time, and it actually is part of my learning process. However, sometimes I need to transcribe those notes. Sometimes we're coming out of the season here. I'm recording this in April, coming out of the last 4 months that are very board meeting and board facilitation heavy. It's that time of year. So there are infinite number of flip chart pieces of paper that have notes on them that need to be captured. All the notes and decisions that were taken during these retreats, all the observations, again, action items, open questions, all those things. Oftentimes, the clients will want a full recording of all the documentation from those meetings. They'll want it as a matter of record. They'll want it as a point of reference. They might even want an executive summary of the proceedings. And that is a phenomenal amount of work that I would say is important, but not necessarily value creating unto itself. It's simply work that has to be done to take it from these physical documents into a digital document that can be polished and then handed over. This year, I was looking at just stacks and stacks of paper, thinking about the number of hours of completely disengaging, de-energizing work that had to happen to transcribe my own sloppy handwriting, My handwriting's pretty good the morning of day one. It is awful afternoon of day three. And I thought, I wonder if AI can help. So what I did is I first asked, I asked Claude, hey, if I send you a picture, can you transcribe my notes? And it said, yes, of course. So I did a few pages as an example. I took with my phone, I took pictures of my notebook. It was probably 5 or 6 pages. I attached those images to a chat and I said, can you please provide me a direct transcription of what's here? Don't polish it, don't summarize it, don't change it, direct transcription. And if there are words that you are not sure what they are, don't speculate, simply flag them. And then I can look at my notes and figure that out. And I was blown away. In less than a minute, in seconds, I had a Word document or whatever format you like that you could download that was a direct transcription. So what used to take me hours now takes me mere minutes. And the minutes I'm spending are on a quick scan, cleaning up and reformatting the information in a way that's going to be meaningful for the clients and the audience that it's being submitted to, and then actually powering and improving the executive summary work that is being done, because I don't suffer from the fatigue of having looked at every line of every piece of paper and spending hours typing this. I don't have the urgency to just get this done and get onto something that's more creative and energizing and fun and rewarding to work on. All of my focus becomes on the value additive piece of summation, of finding the material conclusions, defining what comes next. Hours and hours literally turned into minutes. So something as simple as transcription, which is it's taking an optical view of an image file, providing it into written text in whatever document type that you like. Huge unlock for me. And something, again, this might not be relevant to you, but for people in your organization that aren't maybe using iPads or tablet devices to take notes, which I don't, huge opportunity. And the first example. Second example is a bit more bold, but also very time intensive, and that's research. So I could speculate around how and why you all do research, but I know why I do research. We do research when there's a trend that we want to understand the historical breadcrumbs behind. If there's a trend in consolidation in a certain segment of a supply chain, what is going on there? How long has this trend been happening? What are the material transactions that have occurred? What are the stated or potential drivers of that activity? What should we be looking for in the future that could accelerate or decelerate that type of consolidation activity? As an example, we might do some research to kind of get a point of view on that, or at least have some ground level truth and facts to inform the work we do with clients. Sometimes we take on clients that are in familiar commodity spaces, but in new territories. So working, for example, with folks that are working with specialty crops further west of the traditional grain belt, up into Montana and Idaho, et cetera. That might be occasion where we say, look, these are a bit different territories and somewhat different products, different competitive landscape. What do we need to know about this industry? We have to do research on that. It might be that we're in familiar geographic territory, but radically new product area, a commodity that I've never worked with before, but we have a client that we're engaging with, and we need to go in there competent in some of the basic level information about the industry, the competitive dynamics, where value accrues in supply chain, who the participants are, et cetera. So we do a lot of research. It's just a core part of the work and being a credible, valuable partner to them in their pursuits. AI has helped to radically improve that. The ability for the LLMs to efficiently gather and aggregate and analyze and synthesize the information is remarkable. Now, I will say a couple of years ago, I would not have said this, because the amount of what is called hallucination, where in the absence of conclusive facts, the model, because it wants to be helpful, because it's programmed to give you something that you can use, because it doesn't want to necessarily disclose that it doesn't know, would make something up in the absence of, again, that sort of conclusive, credible truth. And that has improved dramatically over time. Now, I will also still say in my prompts, I always, just like I said in the transcription, I always have a line that I specifically instruct the LLM, do not speculate. If I ask you a question and you cannot get to a conclusive answer, then I would like you to tell me that. That's okay. I'd rather have you say, I don't know, than make something up. I also ask for citations, particularly where there's statistics, specific claims, and conclusions that are made. I would like to have some of the sources. I don't necessarily click into every citation, but I will opportunistically go in, particularly when something feels really quite surprising, outsized impact. I might say, well, let me just sort of fact check that or pressure test it to see what's really going on there. So we will do some of that. But again, the research is remarkable. Now, here's an example. I live in northwestern Michigan, home of sweet and tart cherry growing. I don't know anything about the industry. And so as an example, for this episode, as I was preparing, I wrote the following prompt into Claude.
Poorly executed mergers and acquisitions destroy more value than they create. They can set your company back years. To defend your firm's position in the marketplace, you need access to the leading practices that unlock the greater potential of your people, processes, and systems. If you are undertaking a company transformation or pursuing an acquisition as a vehicle to grow, set up a call with Joe by visiting www.moshercg.com.
What can you tell me about the sweet and tart cherry industry in northern Michigan, including market dynamics, environmental pressures, grower profitability, long-term prospects for the industry, and the best sources of information if I want to learn more? Please limit the report to no more than 5 pages. Do not speculate in the absence of conclusive answers, and please cite your sources. 1 minute and 11 seconds later, it spit out a remarkably comprehensive product. Now, as a side note, I don't know how many of you care about cherry growing in northwestern Michigan. I live here, so I feel like it's a blind spot that I need to course correct for. But if this experiment is interesting to you, go ahead and send me an email or DM me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to share with you what it spit out as a illustrative example. And again, 1 minute and 11 seconds. Now, here's the thing. Not only is it fast, that's a great first step, but as I read through it, my questions got more surgical. They got more precise. They got deeper. I got more inquisitive. I started to say, okay, what I really need to know is this next layer of information. And the beautiful thing is that thread is open. So you pile on saying, that's great. Tell me more about this particular area. Okay, tell me what's driving this particular trend. You can completely or sort of immediately iterate on it. Versus if you hand this off to an analyst on your team, or you charge one of your department heads with doing a study on a particular competitor or specific territory that you want to move into, they will go out, they will do a bunch of research, they will come back and present the product to you. You may have questions, and then there'll be that question of, okay, I have follow-up questions. Do I actually want them to go back and continue this research phase? There'll always be that discomfort of what's my resource allocation optimization decision here? What's the best way to focus their attention? There'll be a trade-off, at which point you'll say, I don't actually want to ask any more questions because I don't necessarily know if it's the best use of their time. With AI, you don't have that. The incremental cost is zero. It's the time it takes you to write the prompt. It's available here and other people are using it. It's available to you too. And so again, my point being, beyond the initial product, which is fast and strong, you get second, third, fourth, fifth versions of it that are getting subsequently stronger and stronger and stronger. And those incremental costs are collapsed to near zero to get there. So second one, research. The third one is the sparring partner concept. And I want to give credit where credit is due here. This was an idea that was introduced to me by friend of the pod, Rishi Pethi, who runs Metal Dog Labs and also writes the outstanding AgTech Substack newsletter, Software is Feeding the World. He had said that AI is a sparring partner, and this is now more than a year ago. So it's something I've been using for a while. AI as a sparring partner had radical outsized impact, particularly for individual contributors or solopreneurs like myself. I run a small business. Yes, I engage project managers on a 1099 basis when we need to support larger client engagements. I have a really strong data analyst and economist that I'll partner with opportunistically as we need to for specific engagements. There's a marketing and post-production agency that I have that supports this podcast. But when it comes to the real work of supporting client strategy, strategic planning, M&A, integration, you name it, it's all me. That's a point of pride. Maybe I'm inhibiting my own growth of the business. Separate discussion, separate topic to get into. But the client-facing aspects of my business is me, which means that the sort of intellectual work within the business, the advice that we give, the recommendations that we craft, the processes we walk clients through, the perspectives that we provide, the best quality that I can come up with on my own is often the best quality that I can deliver to them, which is, again, a limiting factor. This is something that I didn't fully appreciate when I left corporate, but I've struggled with from the moment I went out on my own. It's that loss of a team of not just direct reports, but a team of peers, a team of other professionals in a shared space that you can engage in ideas with, that they improve your thinking. They expose gaps in your logic, gaps in your plan. They can help you anticipate points of resistance. I would have to kind of do this on my own. It's the sort of, biblical proverb that iron sharpens iron. And so what I have done is started to say, okay, look, here's the work that I've done. Here's the conclusions and recommendations that I'm arriving at. If you're a member of a board of directors of an ag cooperative, here's the context of the work that we were doing. Here's what we found. Here's what I'm recommending. What are the questions that you're going to ask? Or where does the data not seem to support the recommendation? Or where does it appear there's a gap where I have not addressed one of the potential concerns? Or where have I perhaps failed to clearly articulate a story and left a weakness in sort of the narrative process? Whatever it might be. That's all in one context of preparing for board presentations, but there's 1,000 others. AI can be that sparring partner. You can invite it to be critical. You can invite it to find the holes. You can invite it to say, hey, look, what are the 5 most likely questions that I should anticipate going into this meeting? It's kind of that silent partner there for the dry runs. So whether you're a solo advisor like me or a CEO sitting on your own that's dealing with a very sensitive matter where you can't think about it out loud with your direct reports, it's something that you can't necessarily bring to your board chair right away, right? You need to kind of chew on it for a while, craft your thoughts, formulate an opinion and perspective. Don't miss out on the chance to really strengthen the product of your thinking by using these tools. Again, anonymize the information, right? Make sure you're using tools that aren't going to train on that data. But again, this is a technology that's out there that can actually help those of us that struggle with these meaningful challenges. And sometimes we're limited to the power of our own initial first effort. This is a chance to amplify the quality, extend the benefit, and be much more polished when you take it to market. Now, again, AI helps with this process. It's not a replacement by any means of taking it to qualified industry professionals. But again, this is very specific to those situations where maybe you don't have access to those individuals, or the context of the thing you're trying to solve doesn't allow you to take it to some of those peers. So again, some of the questions I ask: where are my assumptions unsupported by the data? What obvious conflicting facts have I overlooked? Where might my prescribed solution fail to address the core problem? What have I missed? What am I likely to be asked? This is where AI as a sparring partner can make you a much more effective leader. And then 2 final, pretty simplistic but powerful examples. Slides, right? Don't we all love slides? My career has ended up with me being an independent consultant. And so whether I enjoy or hate slides, they are a currency of the business. Slides is a way that you communicate ideas, whether it's articulating the value you bring as a business, helping educate a prospect on your process, helping to launch a new engagement, help folks see what work lies ahead for them, whether it's delivering training on a new capability you're building or delivering a final product. Slides tends to be the medium through which we deliver the information. And when you're creating slides, someone's spending time building them, right? Probably spending more time than you would like. And that's actually the core problem here. The slide is the medium of communication, but the value is in the message. And we spend so much more time on the medium than the message. The allocation is upside down. And so I have started to say, okay, look, here is the type of audience I'm speaking to. Here's the context of the work that we're doing. Here is the messages I'm trying to deliver. Here's the data that I need to present. Here's the recommendations. It's very context heavy. You package all of that. Basically, what problem am I trying to solve? What objective am I trying to achieve? What is the desired outcome of this presentation? Is it to educate people on an idea? Is it to have them kind of socialize it and test it and start to get comfortable with it, but just to learn more? Is it looking for confirmation and approval? You define that down, you plug all that in, and you can ask Claude or ChatGPT, other ones, please build me a slide deck. Now, what I will tell you is two things. One, you'll be amazed at how quickly it'll spit out a final product. And you'll probably be amazed too at how good the product is from a content perspective. You might be less impressed by the color choices and some of the formatting and font, etc. Maybe you'll be blown away. I sometimes am underwhelmed. But what's interesting is it's generally pretty close at capturing complex ideas with some dynamic data sets into slides in a way that I can help to tell a story, that I can bring an audience along, that I can anticipate their questions, give them the information that they need to stay with me as we go through the discussion. And because that first product does all that work for me of getting these complex ideas onto a slide, and it reduces my effort to, okay, let's make this look and feel like a slide deck from Mosier Consulting Group. Let's make this look and feel like it's appropriate and change some of the word choices to suit this particular client. That kind of refinement, it is a 10x accelerator because it's removed the scut work of capturing the ideas and trying to figure out how to structure them visually. Something that, I don't particularly enjoy. I think I'm decent at, but the client's not paying for that, right? The client is paying for the outcome, and this gets me focused on the outcome. And it also, again, helps to correct that. Am I focusing on the message or the medium? And if all of my time is spent on the prompt, here's the message we're trying to tell. Here's the outcome we want. Here's the data we've collected. Here's what I want them to understand and know and do and believe. If that's where I'm spending my time, now I am almost exclusively focused on the value. The machine can focus on the medium. And how amazing is that? It truly right sizes and fixes that allocation of medium over message problem that I referred to before. Now, again, a real quick call out here. It all comes down to the prompt. You'll need to work with this. If you're someone that does slides yourself, or if you have someone on your team, the more time you spend practicing these prompts and putting things in there and getting more prescriptive, it really helps. And again, you can attach notes. I've sketched out ideas on Post-it notes and said, here's the type of visual I would like. Here's some data files, again, anonymized, that I'd like to present some of the key trends we're seeing. And it will pull all that together into a beautiful product that you can then massage and polish and perfect before you go public with it. So even with the most robust and verbose prompt, and you feel like, wow, I'm spending so much time on this prompt, I should have just written the slides. Wrong. You are spending a fraction of the time in writing the prompt compared to building the slides. And 100% of the time you're spending writing that prompt is additive because it's focusing you on the message, not the medium. The last one I want to bring up here quickly is AI meeting assistants and note takers. Most, if not all of you, have seen these pop into different calls. You might be using some of them already within your organization. Lots of products out there like Fireflies, Granola, Fathom, Notion, Notebook, LM. There's many, many more. And what they are, they're effectively bots that will sync with your calendar. And when you join a Teams, a Zoom, or a Google Meets call, it'll drop into. We've all seen them. I have tried a couple of them. I'm currently using Fathom, and I've been really impressed. Admittedly, I'm a late adopter, but I've been blown away by the value add. So when I started it, I thought, I spent all this time taking notes, kind of back to where we started. And I'm in these conversations with either individuals or small groups. And I'm spending so much time trying to capture these key points. I'm splitting my attention. Am I listening as deeply as I need to? Am I capturing the right details? Am I missing action items? Am I forfeiting the opportunity to ask a really powerful follow-up that's going to reveal something important because I was head down trying to write down the last really interesting thing they said? So when I started using this technology, I said for the first handful of calls, I'm going to let the AI, I'm going to let the bot do its thing. And I'm going to take notes on the side of what I think is important and what the action items are. I did it 3 times, and 3 times right out of the gate, it was 100% aligned on the action items, the due dates, and the key themes of the meeting. This was a tool that had no idea who I was, the type of work that I do, the type of clients that I serve, the types of projects that we're engaged in, no context at all. And it was 100% out of the box aligned with what I would have written down and captured. Now, maybe that just shows that I'm easily replaceable on this element of work by an LLM, and I'm willing to concede the point. But it gave me great confidence that now I can go pen down in a meeting and I can just purely listen. I can be present. I can ask follow-up questions. I can inquire further, all with the confidence and knowledge that those things that I said at the beginning, wanting to capture the meaningful moments of meetings so that we can ensure that the next time we talk, we're moving forward. We're always advancing the business. We're advancing the project. We're moving towards the objectives. I had confidence that was there. And I think the value in the ability to be present has been outstanding for me. It's been incredibly liberating. And I'm listening at a level that traditionally I just simply could not do. It was not a lack of desire, it was a lack of ability. And so as a leader, this has been pure productivity gains, effectiveness, and 100% leverage. So that's it. Transcription, research, sparring partner, building slides, meeting assistance. Like I said at the top, it's far from cutting edge. It's low sophistication, but high impact and game changers. And here's the thing. Each one of these started with me saying, I have to do this thing that feels like I probably have other ways I could spend my time. I wonder if AI can help. And it was just experimentation. And on the back of these, it has opened up my eyes to a number of other ways that AI can support the business. If it's supporting the business, it's supporting the clients. If it's supporting the clients, it's supporting the farmers. And if it's supporting the farmers, it's supporting the industry. And so I can feel pretty good about that. Maybe you as a listener are way ahead of all of this, and that's great. If you are, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear some of those powerful use cases you have. I would love to do a follow-up episode, sort of a medley of cool, novel applications of AI in ag from our listeners, and sort of do a shout-out episode where I highlight some of those from you all. That'd be great, so let me know. But if this is new for you, or if your organization's kind of spinning its tires on how do we get started, or if you've been somewhat reluctant and skeptical, and you're not entirely sure that it can help you, just start experimenting. Just give it a try. There's huge unlock. I'm convinced of it. And I know it'll drive benefit to you, to your employees, and to your customers. So this has certainly been a detour from our normal content, but I hope that it was helpful and additive. And as always, don't hesitate to let us know what you think, whether the feedback is favorable or less so. The pod only gets better the more that we hear it. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for being a part of the Pacesetter Pod community, and for as always, taking the time to listen and consider in action ways to improve strategy execution in support of growing your agribusiness. I look forward to having you join us next time right here on the Pacesetter Pod.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.